Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. I've been thinking a lot about Charles Dickens lately, as the Christmas season always makes me do. My last video here on BookTube was about casting the traditional nativity story using characters from various Dickens characters, my way of responding to Simon's nativity tag. Recently, I also published a book review in the online journal Open Letters Review of a new untraditional biography of Dickens, The Mystery of Charles Dickens, written by A.N. Wilson. I'll leave links down below to both my review and to the nativity tag, and I promise to talk a little more here at some point about the biography, perhaps comparing it to a couple of other literary biographies that have recently been published. But today I want to make an episode of my series Cooking the Books, about cookbooks connected to literary themes or books or authors. It's been a while since I've made one, but I think you'll be getting another Cooking the Books video very shortly as well. So, the two books I want to share with you today are Dinner with Dickens, recipes inspired by the life and works of Charles Dickens, put together by Pen Vogler just a couple of years ago, and Drinking with Dickens, published by Cedric Dickens, Charles's great-grandson, and published back in 1980. Let's look first at Dinner with Dickens. This is a beautifully produced book filled with some intriguing recipes, as well as lots of historical and literary context. Pen Vogler takes traditional Victorian recipes and updates them for contemporary kitchens. Some of the recipes even stem from a cookbook that Charles Dickens' wife, Catherine Dickens, published pseudonymously. And it seems to me that although this book was published in London, it's fully accessible to residents of both the UK and North America, those of us who are metrically challenged. Each chapter is focused around a particular food theme, one inspired by a particular book, or occasionally a particular theme covered in more than one novel. For example, the first chapter is called A Yorkshire Breakfast and honors Dickens' novel Nicholas Nickleby. It includes recipes for Yorkshire cakes, unsweetened rolls made from a yeast-enriched dough, as well as breakfast eggs, Yarmouth bloaters, that is smoked herring, etc. I really love that most of these recipes give not only the contemporary instructions, but some details about how they were discussed in Victorian literature and cookbooks. Vogel's pretty masterful in combining Dickens' sense of comedic characters with his concern about social issues. One of her chapters, for example, is about food for the poor, where she talks about how food is portrayed in both Oliver Twist and A Tale of Two Cities, as well as about Dickens' social campaigning more broadly. Most of the recipes in this particular chapter are fairly basic family recipes made from inexpensive ingredients. There's even a recipe for gruel, which is actually quite similar to what my family made for breakfast the other day. Of course, much of the book is full of much more elaborate cuisine, often beautifully photographed. For example, in the chapter A Little Tea about Martin Chuzzlewit, there is a fancy layered cake called the Highly Geological Homemade Cake, with 4 different layers with different colors and flavors. The colorings and flavors are created with juices made from carrots, raspberries, red currants, and black currants. If you're serving this cake at tea, you might want to serve it with a few of the finger sandwiches the author suggests, a dandelion sandwich, or perhaps a sandwich filled with crushed walnuts mixed into blue cheese, or maybe a sandwich with sliced pheasant, mayonnaise, and spicy lime pickle on brown bread. The next book I want to talk about is Cedric Dickens' kind of charming but very casual and even somewhat random book, Drinking with Dickens. It does not feel like it was carefully edited, and it might have been put together after the author had been sampling some of his recipes, but nevertheless it feels very Dickensian. It's full of personal stories, sometimes personal to Cedric, not just to Charles. In general, the drink recipes are very conventional concoctions, from punch and eggnog to lime rickeys and whiskey sours. If you're looking for interesting or creative cocktails, in general, this is probably not the book for you. Here's one drink, though, that I had never heard of and which intrigues me: a pearl, which is a mixture of gin and warmed porter or stout. Interesting. And it shares its name with one of my favorite knitting stitches. Unlike dinner with Dickens, drinking with Dickens is not full of gorgeous color photography, but there are quite a number of illustrations. Most are illustrations from various novels by Charles Dickens, or at least drawings that fit into that basic style. The author's main goal is, as he says, to milk the fertile pages of my great grandfather's work and letters to gather some of the glorious drinks found there. The author also includes a fair number of drink recipes for other traditional British drinks, handed down through the mists of time, as he says, drinks which might have been right at home on the pages of Dickens' novels, even if they're not from there. There are a lot of interesting historical discussions in this book, too, including discussions related to the consumption of alcohol in Victorian London. For example, at the end of the volume is a list of everything in Dickens' wine cellar in 1870, including everything from dry cider and Madeira to 30 bottles of Australian wine and 27 bottles of brandy. And I especially like at least the idea of the author's discussion about how various Charles Dickens characters drank. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it's a list that will work for anyone but the most devoted Dickens fans. I'm thinking of you, Katie, at Books and Things. Dickens created an enormous number of characters, and in this list, they're not identified by novel. And I was a bit lost, even before I sampled any of the recipes. Well, that will do it for today. Very soon I'll be back with more bookish videos, including another Cooking the Books, a catch-up weekly rambles, and perhaps some discussion of favorite reads from 2020, as well as bookish plans for 2021. Thanks for joining me here today on Hannah's Books. See you soon.